Observe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 37 of the Observe and Rapport Show. We are back. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined, finally, after a long hiatus, by my co-host, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how are we doing the last few months?
Fuck these kids, bro.
You're in a different boat than I am. I had my first, you had your second.
Yeah.
I'm living high, loving life.
You're killing it right now. You're just like,
I'm in a dream world.
this is so great. Everything's just beautiful, isn't it?
Just dandy.
It's just rainbows and sunshine and a little poopy.
Oh, let's have a second one.
Oh, a little spit up. Oh, no big deal. Oh, look, the first one tricks you into having a second one.
Oh, 100%. We're already talking about it. We're like, we got to do this. Come on.
I can't tell you how hard the first month was with the second. Listen, I'm happy for you, but not to be like one of those guys.
Just wait.
But
Just
wait. Here's what happens. The second one comes, or you decide to have a second because you're like, oh, well, this was not that big of a deal the first time. I remember, right? I remember, you got to get up, you got to change them, they spit up a little, whatever it is. You don't remember.
You black out.
You don't remember.
I'm only, my daughter's 4.5 months old. I don't remember the first 2 months.
Yeah.
I already blacked it out.
You don't remember. And when you have to do it again, I was explaining this to your wife, what happens is the first time it happens, you wake up in the middle of the night for your newborn, and it sucks and everything, but you have all this energy from your life. You've never actually dealt with anything yet, right? So you have this giant container of energy.
You got reserves of surplus.
You have a huge reserve
from your pre-kid days, yeah.
Right. And listen, over the course of the first year of your daughter's life, it's gonna be damaged to a point that actually diminishes the capacity of the container itself. So now it's down here. And then you have another kid. So your energy, you think it's still like, it's not. Now it's down here.
Yeah.
It takes a chunk of you.
You're working with a smaller gas tank.
You're working with a smaller gas tank. And you're just shot. You're so shot.
And it's funny you say that too, because I feel like, after the first 2 months with the baby, you're not getting that much sleep or whatever. Like you said, I had that reserve energy kind of, and then it blows off.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the realization of like, oh, my gas tank is much smaller than it used to be.
Yes.
But I keep fooling myself like, but I'll get it back. No. And that's also what every parent says too, is just like, because I think Lauren, my wife, was asking other people like, in their 50s or 60s, just as a joke, she was like, oh my God, like I keep thinking, am I always going to be this tired? And everyone like straight face is just like, yeah. Huh? For at least the next 20 years. Yeah.
What happens is it's like how in Auschwitz they still
nothing like a good concentration camp simile.
It's exactly like how in the Holocaust. No, it's just like how though in that horrible setting they still had mass. And they still told jokes, right? Because you get used to anything. Human beings are very adaptable. We adjust, and we take our surroundings and just kind of at some point we just go, well, what are you gonna do? We gotta do what we gotta do anyway. And like I just started running again, and well, not just, I've been running for a while now, which is like insane because, dude, I thought I'll never be able to exercise again, right? Like I'll never have the energy. But you just get to a point where it hits a wall where you're like, well, I have a choice. I can either become one of those guys who has 2 kids and I'm fat and I'm out of shape and I look like shit, or I can just go for a 40-minute jog.
It's so true.
And like, bro, you just have to.
My whole life. Like,
now I love it.
Yeah.
Now, when you get past the hump.
I'm glad you said that.
You get past the hump, man.
I'm still in the hump right now.
Of run? You're running?
Working out.
Oh, dude, it takes a really long time.
It's never happened in my life. Like I've been someone who consistently for probably the last 15 years, worked out at least 5 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it like there was days I didn't want to and stuff, but like I forced I was the type of person, it was like brushing my teeth. Like I had to exercise. And having the baby, it was the first time where the first 2 weeks I actually like, because I was still, in my rhythm of working out all the time. The first 2 weeks I actually worked out, not every day, but like more than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, I was like, fuck, like I just don't have the energy. I don't have the will. Like
you don't have the will.
And I also I used to also be fueled by guilt. Uh-huh. So like I'd get to like 7 p.m. and I'm like, I didn't work out today. I didn't sweat. I didn't like earn a shower. Like I need to work out, and I would.
Right.
Now I don't even have the guilt anymore. Uh-huh. I'm just like, who cares?
Well, that's what happens, right? Like I talked about this, I think, before with Layla. Like with the first one, I feel like you're talking about it right now without realizing it. Maybe that you realize like, oh, life, it actually gets a lot simpler when you have a child 100%. Because now nothing matters besides that. Like deep down, who gives a shit if I work out? Did my daughter eat? Is she happy?
I would
then
definitely
who gives a shit.
I would definitely say I never considered, I'm not an anxious person, but I definitely didn't realize how much ambient like muddling was going on in my brain of like worrying about things.
Yes.
Until I had my daughter. And yeah, you're like
it calms
life
you.
Just got simpler, and
it just makes you go, well,
like I went 3 days in a row without working out, which I probably haven't done in years. And I was just like, it's all right. Like, and I was just like, that's so unlike me.
Yeah,
like,
that
what?
is. And look, you'll even see, like I had my daughter before my wedding, and usually people look their best on their wedding day, and I looked my worst because I stopped caring about everything. Right. And you know what happened to me too, Kyle? Maybe like I feel like this is something common for people like who lift weights, and we were weightlifters mostly, right? Like mostly we were weightlifters. I got bored of weightlifting because like you've been doing it your whole life since you were 16, 15, whenever it is. And you stop giving a shit about looking like Jay Cutler, you know? You just stop caring. And so I started running again. And running, man, I found some peace in it that I never had. And I've run before, ran a half, whatever. But it wasn't like this. This is like something about it is really tranquil now. And when you don't care about the results, really, it's just about how you feel when you're done. That exertion, that feeling of like, whoa, man, that was rough, gets addicting, right? Like they say that neurologically, the sections of the brain that register and perceive pain and pleasure are really close together, and they easily intertwine if you allow it, which is why people like to get hit and smacked and kicked in the balls and whatever. But pain can, at the end, when it's all about pressure and release, right? So you've got all this pressure on your run, and then when you release the end, you finished, bro. It's so satisfying, and so you'll find it again. But my point is, maybe you just have to change up what you're doing.
Yeah, I definitely do.
You got to start running or start sprinting or start.
Yeah, funny that you say running. Like you found a new joy in it, because I've definitely felt the urge to run more than I have in.
And you're also metaphorically, you're symbolically running from how shitty your life is right now and all that. Like you're running to something, from something, whatever it is. I started following like running influencers.
Damn,
and all these. Oh man, they got me. They got me.
Did you? The question everyone asked me too was like, "Oh, are you still reading at the same clip?"
Yeah,
and I was
definitely
like,
are though.
I was like, actually, yeah, because like the first. Now, not as much. I'm still reading probably more than the average person is, but for my standards, no. But the first like few weeks, because all they do is sleep.
Right.
So I was off work, and I was just like, well, I might as well read. And it was winter, and it was like snowing out.
Yeah.
So I actually read like, I don't know, 7 books in like the first few weeks, and then now I'm like slowing down because just like it doesn't matter as much, and like I usually have my routine in the morning. I wake up, pour my coffee. Yeah. Like lay on the couch.
Even I read more actually I read Consider the Lobster, David Foster Wallace book that I always wanted to. I know you gave it a great review, but I never picked it up because I was so busy.
He's just such a good writer. Yeah,
he's incredible. I gotta say, I wasn't gonna bring him up today, but like I have to say, there's something about him and Hunter S. Thompson and the like, right? Like that kind of new realism whatever the genre is.
Gonzo
journalism, of course. But there's like the new style of like new honesty, I think it's called, or something. New genuine something. These guys, you know, I've found over the years reading, sometimes you come across a book and the author, he's a great writer and everything, but you have trouble feeling like connected with whoever the author really is.
Yeah, they're very good at storytelling, but not telling you what they feel.
Yeah, there's a distance, right?
Yeah.
And whenever there's a distance between you and the medium, it's just kind of like, it's not interesting. But with these guys, man, it's like they're telling you this story
personally
while you're sitting at a bar with them drinking pints. Like it's like you feel it's and therefore it's so funny and enjoyable. David Foster Wallace, Hunter S. Thompson, those kinds of guys, like their books. Like I read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in high school, of course, and like there's something about their honesty and their willingness to like curse even and just kind of be themselves that's really refreshing.
And
you know?
too, like I read a book by David Foster Wallace. My coworker gave it to me, and it's all about tennis. So it's like he was a big tennis player. David Foster Wallace. He was like actually like I think he was like nationally ranked.
Really,
he grew up in Illinois, and he was like one of the top Illinois state tennis players as a high schooler. But so he's really into tennis, and a lot of his career wrote articles on the U.S. Open and like Roger Federer and stuff. So this book, it's a small book. I forget the name of it. Something Breakpoint or something. It's just a collection of all of his writings on tennis.
Yeah.
And my coworker gave it to me, and I was like, all right, like maybe I'll read this in a few months. And he was like, dude, trust me. He's like, I follow your page. He's like, I know the type of writing that you like. Like, read the first chapter on the train home tonight, and like, I promise you, you'll finish it. Yep. And he was so right. It was like he's just such a good writer. I was like, I don't care about tennis, but he was so good.
Who cares about the main Lobster festival? I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. But they write about it in a way where you start to care because, like, obviously Wallace, he turned it into like a philosophical conundrum of like, are we like how could. Why, you know, we talk about this like it's like totally okay what's going on, but the reality is we're boiling a living thing alive, and people are just
he was
totally okay with it.
He was able
reason.
to like he did this in I don't remember which story, but like he's able to describe the beauty of something like he's a journalist covering, you know, a tennis match. Mm-hmm. You know, they're just gonna say fluff pieces like Roger Federer played flawlessly and stuff like that, but then he'll just have a paragraph or two where he just calls out something that he hates or that is really stupid or really hypocritical about the sport or the way that we idolize Roger Federer.
Right.
And you're just like, you're kind of not expecting it.
Yes.
But you agree with everything he's saying.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, I've never thought that. No one's ever said it that well.
Well, his footnotes, he goes off on these tangents. Like on the bottom, like he'll make a comment in the actual text and it'll have an asterisk next to it to like go down to the footnotes and like read more about this. And usually a footnote is like a definition or like a quick little quirk. It's like another whole story of a footnote. He's like, listen, I had to bring this up because this guy's he's so hypocritical the way he would be. I'm like, dude, this guy's fantastic.
And I hate reading footnotes too because it's like small text. But with his, I was like,
you have to read the footnotes. It's a whole other book.
Yeah. It's similar to, so he's like obviously he writes fiction. I actually have Infinite Jest, his book right behind you, which I haven't read yet, but I feel like it's just like one of those books you have to have or have read. Yeah, he has, that This Is Water speech. Have you ever heard that? His commencement speech? Oh my God. It's probably, there's a handful of like best commencement speeches ever. His is definitely in that list.
Wow.
100%. It's like, you know, the Steve Jobs commencement speech.
Yes.
This is as like, amazing. It's like in its simplicity. So he basically, you've probably heard the story. Everyone's heard the story, but they maybe don't know what it's attributed to.
Associate it with.
So he was giving I think it was like 2006 maybe, giving a commencement speech at Kenyon College where I think he went and also was a professor. But he describes two fish swimming in the ocean.
Okay.
And the other one is like,
how's the water?
How's the water today?
Yeah, I know that.
And the other one's
I thought that was just like an anecdote from years ago. That's him?
He coined that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And that the rest of that speech is also like well worth watching or just reading. That's one of my favorites. And
and so this
is water.
It's perfect for college.
Like life is,
right.
You're in it.
You're going to be in it and wow.
But I was going to say, David Foster Wallace, like Hunter Thompson, well known for their nonfiction writing. David Foster Wallace also wrote fiction, but right now I'm reading Amor Towles.
Amor Towles.
Amor Towles, however you say it?
I say Amor Towles. I don't know which one's right.
Yeah. But dude, what a writer. My God.
He has, in my notes on my phone, I have all these, I have like, you use a highlighter. That's your thing. I have notes, and I guess I just like have the time to like type out exactly what this person said. And the Gentleman in Moscow folder, you can scroll for 10 minutes straight. The paragraphs specifically that he comes up with to describe meeting somebody is like, it's like an angel is telling you. It's like,
it feels like someone.
He's incredible.
It feels like watching like a dancer like
move. There's a waltz
left. Yeah, it's a waltz. Like it's sing-songy, and he just flows effortlessly. He's the type of writer that, like, as someone who wants to be a writer and like write a book, I'm like, I'm not a fucking writer.
No,
like that guy is a writer.
Exactly, like, man. And he's one of those guys that humbles you.
It's like, incredible. And
there is a craft here.
I've read 3 of his books now, and like, honestly, even if the plot because I read one of his books is just a bunch of short stories, even if the plot isn't that good and the ending like doesn't really give you a lot of zest, the writing and the prose, the story is just so fucking like ba 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 da 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 da, and like you have to.
It's a symphony.
Yeah,
it's like a symphony.
Really is.
It's not about the end. It's not about the beginning. It's about the journey of the whole thing, the piece, and it's this. It's so true because it's, particularly in A Gentleman in Moscow, the story couldn't be more mundane. It's just like a guy living in a hotel, and he meets a few people, and he's kind of in love with this girl.
Don't kill the ending for me.
Well, I mean, like, everyone knows this story.
I don't know it yet. I don't know the end of it.
Well, he's kind of in love with this girl and whatever. Like, and whatever happens at the end happens, and it's like I could have guessed this. Whatever. It's not about the story itself, but I forget it because I haven't read it in years. But there's a line he has where he says, "In this life, as you get older, so you experience such few new perceptions of joy, and I just want to let you know." And again, just that right there, I just want to let you know. He would never say that. The way he would put it is much more eloquent, but it's something like, I want you to know how genuinely privileged I feel to have made such great new friends. And it brought me to like a tear, because it's like, we all kind of relate to that now as you get older. Like, you don't really have as much time to make friends. You don't really see your friends as much as you used to. And so at this guy's age, to have made a genuine new friend, how happy he is about that. But the way he as a writer can really encompass that feeling. And
they're all like feelings that you've never thought you had until you read what he writes. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it.
Like, and he'll just write about. I literally stopped reading this morning and like told Lauren this, because it's something so true to me and you as readers. He's describing the main character in the book who's trying to read essays by De Montaigne, so they're very like dense and like smart. And he's like, I paused to look at the clock. He's like, and when I looked back, I forgot if I was on the 1st or the 5th paragraph of that page. So I started at the 1st, and I realized, no, maybe I was at the 5th. So I read the 5th, and I didn't recognize that either. So then I flipped back one page, and I didn't recognize anything on that either until I got to the 3rd page, and I realized, how long have I not been paying attention for? The whole time I was thinking about looking at the clock and waiting until I finished to stop to look at the clock. And now I'm here, and I've wasted like 10 minutes of my life. And I'm like, fuck, that's so accurate.
Just the things he says, like he even says like it's Christmas in the book, and he's like, and the joys of the season to you as well, sir. And I'm like,
yeah, even just the dialogue.
That is just a brilliant way of
the dialogue of just
saying
like
Merry Christmas.
I literally, the dialogue of him, the main character, just like saying in Amor Towles language, "Hey, how you doing?" And the other guy going, "Good, you?" But the phrases are so like gentlemanly and elegant, and it's like, "A fine day to you, sir." And he's like, "Indeed." And what, like, it's just like
brilliant.
It sings, and
like,
like,
also something else he says where he talks about his friend, where I forgot his name, but he's pacing the floor and he's thinking of something, and he goes, "I wanted to interrupt him, but I would no sooner interrupt my friend on his feet than I would Vivaldi on his violin."
Yeah.
I mean, like I was like, that's just fantastic as well. Like
he makes a lot of those things, like references to other, artists,
cultural icons,
things, and some of them I don't even know, but I just know what he's trying to say.
It's the Four Seasons. He's a virtuoso.
But a bunch of them, I'm like,
player,
I don't know who that Russian artist is, but like I get what he's saying.
He talks about the black apple forest. Like there's a forest in Russia where black apples grow. It's the only place in the world. And again, it's just, if you're interested, it's one of the, again, nothing to do with the story, but this guy
his writing is nuts.
Is a master author writer. He's incredible.
Yeah, it's just it
sucks you in. You can't put it down.
Effortless reading.
Yes.
And I read another book by him that was recommended called The Lincoln Highway, which was also a very different genre from what I had read in Gentleman in Moscow and Rules of Civility. It was more like, have you ever seen the movie Stand By Me?
Yeah. It's one of my favorite movies.
It was a story like that. It was like two brothers traveling cross country and trying to like find something. And again, it's like the plot isn't that good. Like nothing really happens at the end, and like you said, it's like you kind of expect what happens.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's
such a journey, not the
you're
destination.
Just like I gotta watch this movie. I gotta figure out.
And that's the thing. Like entertainment's kind of become cheaper in that sense. Like everyone always talks about like how in Game of Thrones or whatever. I mean, I loved Game of Thrones. Don't get me wrong, but like the whole point of like the season now is like every episode's a cliffhanger. Like, well, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? None of that with this stuff. It's just like a truly enjoyable experience reading the whole thing. And it's not a short book. It's not a long book, but like it's a really good month you'll spend. Yeah. Right? Like just reading this book.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So getting back to Kanye West, I just wanted to say, you got to let me do this, and I'm not going to scream and yell, but I've been talking about this for years, and I just want to put it on a public platform once and for all. Kanye West is not a musical genius. Okay? Recently, you don't know because you just had a baby, but I've been like back at work and like whatever. He just got, again, in some cultural, ridiculous cancellation situation because he came out with a song.
Counterpoint, before you say this, I would say he is.
Okay, great.
We rarely disagree. So
well, this is exactly. And so I will prove to you for a fact that he is not. Okay?
He's an idiot.
Well, so what? So am I. But like that doesn't mean that you can't be a musical genius.
Well,
so
before you even go into this.
Sure, this is great.
This is also touchy waters that I was not expecting to go down.
I'm not even going to say the H word.
Would you say Bill Cosby is a comedic genius?
Yes.
Okay.
No,
that's all I wanted to hear. Yeah. Go on now.
Because you're a terrible person.
So the fact that you can admit that means you probably have a different angle than I
have a completely different angle.
Then go
on.
And
it's an issue of vocabulary definition. It's an issue of like cultural confusion about the difference between being disruptive and being a genius. Like
it's like the argument of what truly is the MVP of like a sport.
It's kind of like that, but I have factual proof that this man is not a musical genius. Okay. Now let's start with the obvious, right? What instrument does Kanye West play?
Yeah, but I don't think that's a prerequisite for being a musical genius.
How could you possibly? Okay, you know what? John Madden is the greatest football player of all time.
No.
Right. Well, why not? Because he doesn't play football? How is that a prerequisite for being the best football player? Why should you have to be able to play football?
He did play football.
Right, but
I know what you mean. But
well, Kanye West kind of makes music too, but that doesn't mean that he's a musical genius. Okay, put it this way. Well, answer the question.
Well, hold on before you go any deeper.
No, go ahead.
Because if that's like a Douglas Murray.
Oh God! Now we're gonna get into
point
this.
Right there.
No, it's not, and I'll tell you why.
You've never played guitar?
Well, well, here's the thing. Kanye West is a brilliant producer. He is a artistic visionary, maybe, but he's not a musical genius. He plays with loops and samples, and does studio trickery and invites 27 other producers, writers, beat makers, and shit into the studio to make an album. How is he a musical genius? What instrument does Kanye West play? Getting back to my question.
He can play piano. Can he not?
No, he can't. About as much as a 3-year-old
can. Well, he can play
No, he can't.
I think it takes talent in the same way. It's a different talent altogether, but he can play. I forget what the name of that. It's a keyboard where you can program it to like have samples and loops on the keys instead of piano
So
keys.
he takes music that other musicians who actually play music made, and then puts them in a digital audio workstation and goes, "Oh, that's awesome." How does that make you a musical genius? Put it this way.
Because he brings it to life. No one else would have thought of it that way.
Okay, like I said, he's a brilliant producer. Brilliant producer. He's not a musical genius. How could you possibly call somebody a musical genius that can't play an instrument? That's just one of my arguments, by the way. That's not the argument here. All I'm saying is Prince is a musical genius. Prince played every instrument on his debut album in 1978. For You. But by the way, there were 27 of, by the way. He played 27 instruments by himself, produced the whole thing, mixed the whole thing, mastered it, right? Wrote every note on that album. That is a musical genius, okay? Just because you know how to play with loops and samples and do studio stuff, that does not demonstrate a deep technical or even non-technical understanding of music itself. He has no idea what's going on. He can't even play... If I played a G chord in front of him on the guitar and I asked him, what did I just do? He wouldn't know.
Yeah, but I don't think that matters.
How could that not matter? Okay.
Because it's the same, to me, it's in the same vein as I can be a genius guitar player and not know what a G chord is, not know how to read music.
Jimi Hendrix kind of argument. Understood.
Not have played in a... I can not have played in a band.
But Jimi Hendrix...
Not made a song.
The point is, what I just said is so elementary that even Jimi Hendrix, who doesn't know how to read or write or whatever music, would know what I'm doing. This guy has no clue what's going on. That's just one of my arguments. Like, okay, for example, like Stevie Wonder, another guy, played every instrument, whatever. I just don't get where he gets off or people get off calling him a musical genius. Do you know how rare it is for the culture to be blessed with the birth of a musical genius? They change music itself. That's the other thing. If he's a musical genius, where's the innovation? It's all evolution. It's like people talk about him with auto-tune. T-Pain did it already, and he just made it more mainstream by putting it in bigger songs. It's like he never invented anything. He can't play any music, literally play music. So how is he a musical genius? He's a great producer. Okay, I'm sick of people like this new song came out. I don't even want to talk about it, but it came out and everyone's like talking about it on podcasts and they're like, well, the song is very ridiculous, but he's a musical genius. I don't know what to say. And I'm like, the guy is not a musical genius.
All right, he's
a producer.
I'm starting to understand your argument a little bit more. So I'm like, I'm not fully agreeing with you, but you're moving me away from my initial position. I'd say you're doing a good job because I agree with you.
Well, because I'm right.
Points.
Kyle,
I agree with you on certain points.
Right.
I'm not willing to like perfectly say you're correct and I'm wrong. But so I would wonder, who would you put in that category of musical genius? Because I
just said Stevie Wonder, Prince, right? Phil Collins. I'm talking about people who see nothing. Like, put it this way.
Would you call Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah,
I would. Yeah,
for sure. That's the other thing.
I'm trying to think who else. Who?
Kyle, these are all people who at least play an instrument.
Who in rap?
Nobody. A musical genius, a lyrical genius, a rhythmic genius. Oh, well, it depends. In rap, I mean, if we're talking about Dr. Dre, he's a brilliant producer. Look, you got to understand something. I'm not trying to bash rap here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a huge fan of rap. I'll rap the Eminem show front to back right now. I'll do the whole thing. It's not about rap that's the problem. Because Dr. Dre doesn't walk around saying I'm a musical genius. Tupac never walked around talking about how I'm a musical genius. Because they know that they were not that. They were brilliant lyricists. They were incredible rappers. They were the best hip-hop artist in the world, whatever they were boasting about. But a musical genius, where the fuck do you... That guy is a clown. Are you kidding me?
You know what? You might be right.
A musical genius?
You might be right.
The guy can't read sheet music, can't write sheet music. I mean, at what point are we even talking about music with the guy? He doesn't... Like, for example, and you know what he would say. If I played a G chord in front of him and said, what is that? He would be like, I don't need to understand what he's doing right now, because just because he has his interpretation of what music is called, I call it something different that doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that he is unoriginal or something like that. He would do something like that and try to dance around the fact that he doesn't know what a fucking G chord is on the guitar. He's not a musical genius. I had other points, but
no, I'm coming around.
Because it's enough with people talking about this.
It's funny
guy.
because I've never actually considered, because I've sort of touted that phrase or that pejorative, like, oh, I think he's a musical genius. Like, he's made some of the most incredible songs, albums, sounds, like collaborations, most iconic songs of our generation, like pushed the industry forward for a while. Just had like groundbreaking albums and a groundbreaking sound, he's a great producer. That's what he is. My argument, I'm agreeing with you. My argument would be some of the beats he made gave me a similar feeling to like listening to Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix, where I was like, how the you know what I mean? Like Lucifer, the Jay-Z song, the beat on that.
Right.
It's one of the most insane.
Like I said, all those guys who make beats, like the guy who made the beat for the Jay-Z song, Dirt Off Your Shoulder.
Timbaland.
It's just, it's incredible, right? That guy calls himself a producer. You're not a musical genius because you wrote a beat, okay? I'm a drummer. Don't get me wrong.
Although in that video when he shows that to Jay-Z, Timbaland, I think that at the end when Jay-Z is just like leaning back, like laughing, Timbaland's like, that's why I'm the best.
Yeah, he does say, I'm sure you may be the best, but you're not a genius. You're not a musical genius. You okay, fine. In your right, you might be a genius. But this guy couldn't play Mary Had a Little Lamb on the keyboard. So he's not a musical genius.
To me, what do they call it?
Look, there's a difference between a producer and a musician. That's all I'm saying. And to call yourself, it'd be fine if people were calling him a genius. Because it's like, okay, in many respects you are. Artistically, sure, but you're not a musical genius.
So I remember hearing one of my favorite like quotes that I heard that made me rethink of creativity and art. It was art is how we create in space, right? So a painting or a sculpture. Music is how we create in time. Mm-hmm. If you look at it by that definition, I think Kanye is one of the best creators of time and sounds. So he's able to manipulate sounds, to be pleasing to the ear, like new, unique, iconic, catchy, and like rhythmic.
You're describing a great producer.
That is a talent.
Absolutely,
he's a genius at that.
Absolutely, he's a studio genius.
And there's no denying he's a genius at that.
100%, he's a genius in the studio. But people act like, I think there's a misconception amongst people who don't know what really goes on in the musical world, that he's sitting there like creating actually, when he's really just going through a library of samples and loops and just kind of picking things out. And yes, he picks the right things, but in the same way that Warren Buffett picks the right things. Like, you're the best at that, but like, you didn't actually make the money. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever. He's a producer. He's brilliant. He's great. Whatever. He's not a musical genius. Geniuses don't have to beg people or be controversial for that matter to be like, just to make the news, to make people say your name. They say your name because you're the greatest, because you're incredible, because you're undeniable, you're immutable.
But at the same time, this ties back to something we talked about on the last podcast many months ago, which was, I said it right here and I can't remember the quote, but it was basically, the people you admire who do unbelievable and impossible things will inevitably do things that you hate.
Yeah, there's parts of them that are probably like, oh, because everything they do times 10.
Well, I mean, like,
right?
I think the closest comparison, especially because everyone's calling them, the N-word, the other N-word.
What?
The N-word with a Z in it.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I've never heard that
one. I didn't want to say it on YouTube or whatever, but would be like Elon Musk.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
But Elon Musk is a genius.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, but that's again, that's self-evident.
But I feel like those two are like,
have to beg
those
anyone.
two are like at a similar, I don't know, they're on a similar energy of
Kanye
just like, they have to push the boundaries in every way possible because that's the only way they can like be as prolific as they are.
I just hate that people walk around thinking that this guy is some insanely ununderstandable genius, that he's got some magic power behind music. That, bro, he's a fucking clown. He can't play an instrument.
So with that, what is your favorite Kanye West song?
I don't think I guess Gold Digger. I mean, it's fantastic. It's at the weddings, right? It's good. I mean, like, again, you know, being controversial for like the sake of creating a cultural ripple, it's like, does that make you a genius? I think that makes you an asshole. Like, that doesn't make you a genius. Would a genius think to like, I'm just going to be as provocative as I possibly can so that people keep talking about me? Because obviously there's no genius underlying him really that makes people keep listening to him and keep checking out his stuff. Like, he has to like go through these insane lengths of being like provocative and controversial to get people to give a shit anymore. I mean, Yeast sucked, right? The last 2 albums he came out with were trash. Everyone knows it. That's the other thing. Geniuses don't have bad albums, ever. There is no, oh, that album sucked by Prince. Stevie Wonder, that album sucked. Phil Collins, that sucked. Paul McCartney, no, that one sucked. There's none of that. They're geniuses. They only come out with good shit.
It's fair. I think my only contention still,
it's the definition. Musical genius is wrong.
Yeah, my only contention would be I still would consider someone who can't play an instrument, I could still consider them a musical genius.
They're a producer then. They're not a musical genius. Like, if you can't play music, how could you be a musical genius?
So I was thinking of like Avicii. I don't know if you've watched any of the documentaries on it. I wouldn't consider him a genius. I'm not saying that. But I think he could only play piano. But with that skill, he was able to produce melodies.
Right.
And this is other peers in the music industry, in the documentaries, like famous, you know, the lead singer, Chris Martin from Coldplay, like Wyclef Jean being like, that kid is a genius. So like,
you could be a genius, but you're a genius in the studio. You're a genius with the tools. You're incredible at
but it's with production. To me, though, you can be a music genius with the tools that you're skilled at.
I think you're mistaken in a sense. I think that
you can play the harmonica and that be the only instrument you play and still be a musical genius, I think.
For sure. But if you actually work with these programs, I think people underestimate how easy it is.
So would you you know what? You know what could be the next comparison of this would be a writer who uses AI.
Right.
Would they be a brilliant writer?
That's exactly right, Kyle. I mean, like, you don't understand. Like, I know, because I make music and I produce music and stuff. Like, I'm not saying you don't know. Like, I'm talking about Douglas Murray. I'm not saying you've never been to a digital audio workstation. Like, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, if you actually work with these programs, you realize they kind of lay it up for you. Yeah, it's not like you have to know how to play the keyboard.
I've made some GarageBand songs back in
Correct.
the day. Yeah.
Anybody could put a loop or two together and create something that doesn't sound like absolute dog shit. Dude, a literal child can do it. So it's like, are you a genius, bro? I mean, like, have we forgotten what that word means? It's like when Louis C.K. had that joke. He goes, "Can we go right for the top shelf with our words now?"
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he goes, no, he's like, my friend, you know, someone will be like, "Oh, I brought a cup in case we need another cup." And dude, you're a genius. What? It's just a good idea. That's all. You know?
Said, oh my God, that's awesome. He's like, really? It inspired awe?
Right. Yeah. That's hilarious. Was it? You know what hilarious? Hilarious means it was so funny you almost lost your mind. Wasn't that funny? You know what I mean? Anyway, like, the point is, it's an issue of definition. But like, the issue is he's being as controversial and anti-Semitic as he's being, and with the label of like musical genius attached to it, it gives his opinions merit when they don't really deserve it. Well, I think the guy's just a big pompous prick.
I feel like I haven't really been following the news since my daughter was born at all, so I could be wrong on this, but I feel like everyone's kind of just sick of Kanye and like not really paying attention anymore.
Well,
I could be wrong.
Sure, but he still has,
I feel like
he still has 33 million followers, and I'll tell you right now, man, anti-Semitic traffic for me, like as a scroller, even just as an everyday doomer scroller like everybody else, I see these just blatant like anti-Jew things, and I'm like, how is this back? Like, and I can't help but think that it has something to do with him, right? It has something to do with just ever since October 7th, just people like Dan Bilzerian. I fucking can't stand that fucking guy. At first he was he was the guy who was just online, like,
I could never stand him.
With all the hoes and the boats and the whole thing. And then he gets on like Piers Morgan. He's like, yeah, I've actually, found Jesus now, and I'm done with that life. I'm done with that life. It doesn't serve me anymore. But I'll tell you what else. The Holocaust never happened. And you're like,
Jesus
what?
Christ.
This is what you're doing now?
Dude, one of my favorite takes, and we sent it to each other, but
some of the biggest celebrities on social media right now are just outrightly just like Heil Hitler, fuck the Jews. Kanye said enslave and whip the Jews in a tweet. 33 million followers. Why is that like?
I guess I didn't have to censor myself with saying Nazi at this point.
Don't worry about it.
But
you're gonna get doxxed.
No, I was going to say one of my favorite takes. It's on the same subject, but Tim Dillon talking about Sam Harris.
Oh, he's the worst now.
Sam
that guy's
Harris.
fucked.
So for people who might not,
something happened.
I'm sure people are familiar with Sam Harris, but I'll just give a little description. He's basically, Sam Harris is a known, what is it called when you're not
neuroscientist?
Yeah, but what's it called when you're not religious? Atheist. Renowned like atheist author, but like a very good neuroscientist and like brilliant, like, one of these guys that you would consider a public intellectual.
For sure.
You just like listen to him speak on
Author,
on any topic, and you're like, wow, this guy's very
neurobiologist,
eloquent.
brilliant.
And he also runs a meditation app called Headspace, which I actually used maybe 7 or 8 years ago for a little bit. And it was very good. He walks you through meditation, and he writes about talks about his own meditation journey and everything like that. He wrote a book called Waking Up about meditating and clearing your mind. But at the same time, he's also just talking about like the Israel-Palestinian war on podcasts, just talking about how we should just indiscriminately bomb women and children.
Yeah, right. He's insane.
And Tim Dillon's like, I just think it's a kind of a funny story arc to be the guy who runs a meditation app during the morning, and then at night you're talking about how we should bomb women and children.
Unapologetically. He went crazy with Trump. He went crazy with all these things. So, I want to get to the whole Douglas Murray, Dave Smith thing because, and I don't want to talk about who's right or who's wrong or what side you're on. It's not that. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that podcast episode.
We'll give a little description for people who might not have listened to.
Well, so
I can do it because you're probably going to talk for a while.
I'm going to rant.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan hosted Dave Smith, who is honestly one of my favorite political thinkers. He's a comedian, but a staunch libertarian, and just a really brilliant guy who's very well read on politics, history, global conflicts and everything like that. And he might not know everything, but I feel like he's a very truthful, transparent person. He calls out kind of untruths. He was very accurate on COVID and stuff. He had a debate with Chris Cuomo where he demolished him on COVID. It was incredible.
Demolished.
So check that out.
Embarrassing.
Dave Smith versus Chris Cuomo. It'll change
it's embarrassing.
Yeah, it'll change your whole opinion on a lot of things. But anyway, he had him on, Joe Rogan, along with Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray, I don't know his whole bio, but I've also kind of followed him for a long time. He's a British historian, kind of an expert in, he's a journalist and just very also well-read, well-researched. Douglas Murray came in hot.
Within the first minute.
Basically criticizing and blaming Joe Rogan for having such a big platform and essentially, having a lot of these so-called non-experts come and talk eloquently about their expertise on subjects like war and history and stuff like that. But then when those same people got called out for maybe not being accurate, they were able to fall back and be like, well, I'm not an expert. And well, I'm just a comedian, or I'm just a auto mechanic, or I'm just a philosopher, and these are just my opinions. And Douglas Murray was like, you, Joe Rogan, basically, you have a responsibility to have more vetting and have more experts on here who know history and who know what they're talking about. And I'll let you kind of take it from there, but it got way more combative, basically.
Right. So the issue, though, is that Dave Smith is obviously not labeled occupationally as a journalist, as a historian, all of those things. So we really don't have to get into the episode as much as we do. It's because what happened in the aftermath of all of that is that it became quite obvious, or it was a big exposure of the issue now with the information age / slash the podcasting, like, revolution.
Yeah, the counterculture has now become the culture.
Right. And like, it's never been so easy to like, have two idiots with microphones put something on YouTube, right? So like Douglas Murray's point is that, I think what his point is, Kyle, is that like, hey man, do you guys think that what you're doing is any different than what's already been done? I'm just going to play Douglas Murray's friend here for a second to see what you think. Just to see what you think. I think what his point isn't that, like, because Dave Smith is saying that Douglas Murray is saying people who aren't officially from the university given the degree of a historian, they shouldn't be allowed to talk about these kind of issues. But I think what Douglas is really saying is that, look, man, just because this is amplified millions of times over because of the internet doesn't mean that these hashing outs haven't already happened. Like, we're talking about war here. We're talking about war. And in war, things get done that aren't going to be perfect, right? Like, obviously, you can take any historical issue that ever happened, any war, any conflict, and take the side that history said won and find things that they did that were wrong. And then therefore say, well, look, they did this, and that, and this. And like, so look, obviously we were the bad guys. And it's like, that's not always true. Like, at the end of the day, there's people who are doing something that are right and people that are doing something that's wrong. And it's not that simple, because right and wrong, it depends on who you are and what your culture is and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what do you believe, right? And it's like, I think Douglas is just wondering, like, why even bother making the case that America and Israel are the evil ones here, and that the Palestinians are the ones who are suffering, when in reality that might be true, that Palestinians are suffering. But what are you trying to accomplish by calling out all of the mistakes that we've made along the way? I don't understand. Like aren't you in the end for the West? Aren't you in the end on the West side? Like, ultimately, in war, dude, I'm talking about killing of civilians. The bombing of Dresden, like just us alone, like we killed 100,000 innocent civilians, like in World War II and whatever.
Well, Japan, yeah,
right, and Hiroshima, Nagasaki. We've killed millions of innocent civilians over the years, but we were trying to accomplish or prevent something from being accomplished that would have been completely catastrophic to the human race potentially. So like, I think that Douglas is just trying to call some light to the fact that, like, hey man, this is like serious shit. Like, this isn't like, oh, we're gonna sit back in the comedy cellar and just call out the winning side, for this little mistake they made along the way with saving the world. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
a little bit. I do get that, but at the same time, what right does he have to
say that you can't talk about
people
things?
You can't or shouldn't talk about it?
That's the problem, is that this free speech issue, it's
you know what it is? It's what it is. It's the same thing that's happened over the course of history, like all the time. It is, we had a media for decades in this country that was centralized, right? It was, for a long time, it was 3 broadcast networks on cable television. That was it. Then, there was the sort of the standard media of Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, and that was considered, kind of the truth, at least, right. Or maybe not the truth, but just the newspaper of record, where like that's where you went to get the majority of the objective truth of something that happened across the world or domestically, whatever it might be. Now, people have lost trust in those because we've seen them exposed and naked for all of the lies that they've told and the propaganda that they've sold over the years. And now public opinion and public, want and demand has shifted over to this decentralized medium where there is no, like you said, establishment, or there's no top-down person or entity or corporation that is telling you sort of, hey, here are the boundaries of what we can and can't say. Here are the rules of morality that we need to adhere to.
Based on funding,
the rules of engagement,
right?
What you can and can't say, the type of person you have to present yourself as, and everything like that. And now it's sort of this wild, wild west. And, I can see from a perspective of someone who sees the potential chaotic world that could bring.
Yeah.
I see that for sure. I'm not doubting that. I can understand that not having so-called experts or so-called reliable media entities can form a very chaotic world where you don't have centralized control or a centralized narrative. But I think we're all afraid because it leaves no control. And I think as humans, we crave some sort of consistency, some sort of certainty, some sort of control. But I think in the long run, decentralization and letting the truth unfold across every type of person and narrative and unfiltered speech is actually the route to more truth than a centralized entity.
I have to agree with you, because I think Dave Smith's point, like if I'm going to be Douglas Murray's friend, I'll be Dave Smith's friend now. Like, it's not as if he's just trying to be like, oh, well, I really know what's going on. You guys trust the established.
He admitted when he was wrong, or like conceded points to Douglas Murray. I think
that the ultimate point that people like Joe Rogan, people like Dave Smith, people like Tucker Carlson, like what the point they're trying to make is, end of the day, people dying is bad. Ultimately, that's the problem, right? Like, just because we in the past have done this before and it ended up being the right, that doesn't mean that we can't improve upon the means in which we do the right thing, right? Like we ultimately,
sure, we did the right thing. We did the right thing in World War II, but there are some areas where we could have been better.
Could have not, right. We could have not maybe done things a little bit differently.
500,000 people in a single day,
babies burnt to a crisp, the whole thing. Like, that's not good in the end. Like, and Dave Smith had a great point actually when he was talking in retrospect about the show. He was like, the thing about people always say, Israel has the right to exist. Israel has the right to defend itself. And he goes, here's the issue. In the West, we believe in individual rights. Individual rights, meaning, like, what does it mean that Israel has a right to exist? Like, America has a right to exist. What does that mean? Like, ultimately, America was founded on, genocide. Like, we came here and we killed everybody and then we took the land. That doesn't really give us the right to exist, right? It's we just exist now.
Yeah,
right.
True.
So like, and I was like, that's a really good point actually. And he goes, I'm not saying it's America. That's every country. Every country.
Individuals have a right to exist.
He goes, individuals have the right to exist and defend themselves. When you try to apply that mentality to a grand scale like a country, it gets a little quirky because, well, at the expense of what? Other individuals not having the right to exist, like Palestinians. It's like, what defines a country? A constitution, a military, and borders. That's it. And it becomes hypocritical, right? It becomes hypocritical if we have the right to defend ourselves and exist, how at the expense of other people not having the right to exist. It's hard, right? And like, I think that the point is, on Dave and Joe's and like everyone else in the free speech realm on the left side of the argument, their point is that if we don't talk about these things, right, it'll be business as usual. We'll just keep going in these cycles of war, cycles of 20-year wars, and people will be innocently and unjustly killed along the way, and that's just not okay, because it's, whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of the issue, that still happens.
Yeah, because it's almost like you have, a dusty box of photos in your attic and someone's saying, you don't need to see those. You already lived those experiences.
Right.
You know what happened. Right. And someone else is going, yeah, but why can't I just look at them?
Right.
And be like...
And you can't tell people that they can't talk about things. Although, like, like you said, you acknowledged it can fuel people who are extreme or leaning towards extreme. It can fuel them in that it can nudge them off that cliff where they become radicalized. And that's scary, but it can happen on the right or the left.
You know what it is? It's the same argument. That's why I said it's happened over in history. It's the same argument of like a democracy.
Yeah.
For most of humanity, 99.9% of humanity, it was rule of the top down.
Right.
Communist, socialist, dictatorship, whatever. And imagine being the one guy who was like, hey, what if we let the people decide? Right. And trusted them and just like... took the reins off and just saw what happened. And can you imagine everyone else was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Are you kidding me?
That is what happened.
And it's the same thing with free speech. With free speech and getting rid of like institutions, you're basically saying, hey, what if we let everyone say whatever the fuck they wanted?
Right.
Like, you think that'll work?
Mass.
And my opinion personally is, I think it can. But when humans and entities try to control it and like put their force onto it, that's what fucks it up.
Yeah,
I think.
But there's still like an issue with that. Like when Dave Smith was talking about Douglas, he goes, Tucker made the insinuation that his career was destroyed now ever since that show. And Dave was like, I don't think it is, because he made very sure he made it very clear during that episode which side he was on. And Dave's kind of given this whole like, well, you know who runs the media and like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I just can't help but shake this feeling that people like Dave Smith, who is Jewish, by the way, mom and dad, both Jewish. He's a full-blown 100% Jew, 89% Jewish, Ashkenazi Jew, as he said in his, whatever, he did a 23andMe. But I can't help the feeling that like they're kind of like secretly, again, like this fueling this idea that the Jews run the world, right? Like the Jews.
Back to that.
I just don't understand, like, put it this way, man. I'm all about meritocracy. I'm all about meritocracy. If you do well and you do well for yourself and do well in college and follow the rules and get to the top, who am I to tell you that you don't belong there if all of you happen to be Jewish? Like, it's like, I don't even know if that's true. But it's a weird conspiracy that's like being taken as like face value, like unspoken truth now, that the Jews run the world. The Jews run the world. And it's like, I don't understand why that's like totally allowed to be just like broadcasted out there, because isn't that like the same kind of narrative that fueled the Holocaust? Like it's the same kind of and to me, I think from Douglas's point of view, like that's the problem here, is that like you see the fringe part of the right now, like this fucking retard, Nicholas Fuentes. You know who that is?
No.
He's this kid who shows up on my Instagram. I don't know how it's possible that he exists on social media, dude. The things he says about Jews, about black people, about gay people, about women, it's horrendous. The kid deserves to be hung. I swear to God. And it's like 20,000 likes, 30,000 likes, 100,000 views, 6 million views. I'm like what? How is people like him now are being like, you see, like everyone, and I think that it's one of those things that people fail to realize the reality of these problems before, not long before, a bunch of them are getting thrown into an oven, and then for the first 2 years that it's happening, people are going, he's not really doing that.
But ties really nicely into the book that I read about this. Did I tell you about this? In the Garden of Beasts.
No.
By Eric Larson. Awesome book. So I forget who recommended it to me, but it might have been my jiu-jitsu professor, because Eric Larson's written a bunch of good books about World War II and history and stuff like that. He writes it in sort of like a narrative way, like history, but told like a fiction with like chapters of like stuff about different characters. So this book, In the Garden of Beasts, it's about in the 1930s, there was a guy, kind of a meddling professor at a college somewhere in like Pennsylvania, I want to say. I'm going to get all the details wrong.
In America?
Yeah, in America. I read it a few months ago, so I'm going to miss some of the details. But, a meddling professor, kind of a smart guy, but never really did too much in his life. He wanted to write a novel or wanted to write like a history book and like kind of retire. But he was sort of at the end of his career as a professor, and he wanted a job as, kind of a cushy government job. And FDR became president. And he had some ties to politicians, congressmen, secretaries of state and stuff. And he wanted to become an ambassador, sort of to a foreign country and sort of retire there, write his, book and live a nice, like, cushy life.
Uh-huh.
So FDR is hiring an ambassador for this one country that he wants to do. And, people keep saying no and no. Other people are busy getting hired for other positions. Finally, FDR gets 11 rejections for this one spot. And he gets to this professor, and he asks the professor, eventually writes him a letter and says, I'd like to extend to you to be the ambassador to Berlin. And this is 1936.
I get it.
In Berlin.
I see where it's going.
So like you start the book off like that.
Right.
And you're like, oh shit. So this guy moves his family from America to Berlin thinking it's gonna be a nice job. Like, you know, my family's coming. We're gonna.
Auf Wiedersehen.
It's a beautiful new country.
Right.
We can learn German. We'll meet new people. He had a beautiful daughter who was like 20 years old. She can go to college and stuff.
You know?
So it talks about, you know, kind of the idyllic first year or two of living there and like enjoying their time. And the daughter is like kind of a, you know, gets around and she's having her fun. She's 20 years old, pretty blonde girl, getting around town. And, you know, slowly they start hearing about, you know, attacks on Jewish people. And like protests about, you know, a Jewish shop and stuff like that.
Exactly what's going on.
And you see it in their like diaries. They have diary entries where it's just like there was another attack on a Jewish man today. He was beaten in the street, and people were cheering for it. But everyone's saying there's a rise in this. I don't really see it happening. I think it was a one-off case, and it just slowly starts building. And even the ambassador, he's like meeting with. I forget the names of the guys, but like, you know, kind of like the Himmlers and like the guys who are right next to Hitler, like the right hand man. And he's starting to meet with them and just being like, these guys are getting a little aggressive, you know, talking about some of their hatred of the Jewish people, you know. And even this guy too, the ambassador, like wasn't in love with Jewish people. So he, you know, was a little bit anti-Semitic himself. But you just see the slow rise. Because you didn't really, in America, you didn't hear about this stuff in concentration camps until what, like...
Till like the 40s.
Yeah, 1943, 44, when we entered the war. So imagine, this is 1936. So 8 years before America even heard about this guy is journaling it and writing about it. The daughter goes on like a date with Hitler and stuff, and like, it's just like,
wow.
She's dating guys who are like the top brass in the Nazi regime. And this guy is just slowly starting to be like, do I need to get the fuck out of here?
Right.
And like some of the ambassadors, like American ones or Australian or UK, they'll also like write columns for newspapers, and they start criticizing some of the stuff this new Nazi party is doing, and this new guy, Adolf Hitler. And all of a sudden they like vanish, or that they have to flee to another country. And the ambassador's like, shit, do I have to like be careful of what I say here? And like, it's a slow boil.
That's the thing, is that it's inch by inch.
Yeah.
It's inch by inch, encroach slowly but surely, steadily and steadily. It's the tortoise and the hare, just like evil. It's like eventually, before you know it, things can get out of fucking control. And I think that's Douglas's only point, is that like, dude, look, he was a little too hard on the whole, like, you know, like, who do you think you are? Like, talking about these things. Like, he went about it in a wrong kind of, like, his approach was wrong.
Yeah, I sort of understood what he was saying.
Yeah, but like, and I understand. Let me just say too, like, I don't think that only because obviously, you know, COVID was obviously a bunch of bullshit in some ways, not 100. I'm not saying it wasn't real. I'm not saying it was like a conspiracy. But what I'm saying is that if you look back at pictures of those days, you can't help but now look back and go, what the fuck were we doing, bro?
Yeah.
Like some of these hilarious pictures of people. Like I remember, like we had my wife's 30th birthday at a bowling alley during that time.
Yeah.
Remember they had these fucking plastic things hanging
shower
in between
curtains in between.
aisle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I remember
right?
saying that at the time too. You're like, what is this?
And like, if it weren't for people like Dave Smith and all these people who weren't experts on the subject talking about how ridiculous this is, it would have been a lot harder to like wake up as soon as some of us did and be saved from some of the psychological.
Well, the podcasts were some of the best media for getting through COVID.
Right. And like, so I get it. I totally understand. It's just that like war, right? Conflict between nations. Like Douglas Murray had a point. He goes, who exactly is waiting for a 20-year-old girl at Columbia's opinion on this, on the anti-terrorist efforts of Israel? Who exactly is really curious what she thinks anyway? Like, that's what you're doing with your college career, is like you're camping out on campus, disrupting things because you think you know a 20-year-old girl from Virginia who's never seen anything besides the inside of her bedroom and the inside of an Applebee's. You think you know what the best thing to do is about two countries 5,000 miles away. You have no clue what's going on. Yeah. You think you know what the best thing to do is. Like, it's just not true, right? And like, so I think that Douglas has a point. He has a huge point, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that Dave Smith, though, ultimately has a point in that this is not going away. The podcast world, these so-called non-experts having opinions and getting it out to millions of people. That's just the way it is now. And it goes towards the next election. Like, someone was talking to me about the next Democratic nominee. I'm like, well, I'll tell you right now, he better be a fucking celebrity, or at the very least, he better be, or she better be somebody who can go through a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do that, that is expected of the president now.
Which is incredible, because I've wanted that for years. Even before podcasts were a thing. You wanted a presidential candidate, or anyone who you put a lot of your trust in, to be someone who wasn't giving those like fake canned answers on TV. And
so the point is, like, I'm grateful to the podcast world and what it's done for things like that. Like, it's made the world a much more honest, in a sense, place. But we just have to be very careful about what the, ripple of that might look like, because I'm seeing it, man. I'm seeing a lot of weird content pop up on my shit, and I'm like, bro, this is like,
it's gonna present and bring up a lot of uncomfortable, scary, horrific, and probably really regrettable things. When you fully democratize speech, it's gonna bring up some shit that you don't want.
Exactly. And that's
control
the point. I think
having a controlled entity cover that medium limits that, and that's what you could say is like the protective barrier, or the reason that we should herald those institutions, which I get. But you're never going to uncover the real truth of certain things. You may never uncover truth on anything, but you're
can't handle the truth.
You're not going to uncover truths with a controlled entity. You're going to have to let people speak freely and have uncomfortable conversations and bring up very controversial opinions that will probably be wrong 99% of the time. But the 1% where they do go down that rabbit hole and they uncover something that we never would have found otherwise, that's what makes it important.
I also think that, again, to Douglas's point, though, I just think that from someone, and and people were like mocking him, like, have you been there? Have you been? But like, I gotta say, I feel like that does matter in a way.
Definitely does.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's not completely ridiculous to suggest that you might not know exactly what's going on somewhere if you haven't been there. Like, and he has been to a lot of war zones, and like, so what I honestly fear that Douglas might have a point on is that, like, war zones are not like a meeting, room or whatever. Like, it's a real fucking place where people are dying every day, right?
Yeah, there's no rules, really.
Right. And like, well, that's the thing, though. There are. And
but you don't have to. No one's telling you have to follow them.
Well, the rules are not rules that we're used to in everyday civilian life. They're not the laws. They're the rules of war, and they're different. People get killed, okay? And I think that what's going on, too, is that, like, in this soft culture that we've created for ourselves over the years, when a war or something horrible is going on, something violent is going on between two countries, I think that he just may be more aware of the reality of what that's like. And what I said, I fear, he might know that, like you people, you think because you read a couple of Christopher Hitchens books or whatever, right? Like, but the reality is that this is a cyclical human problem that we fall into, find ourselves within all the time. And you may think that that if hey, if we just tell the truth, we will steer clear of it. Hey, if we just think that, if we just follow the golden rule, we'll steer clear of it. The thing is that the world is so complicated sometimes, and circumstances are as they may, lay themselves out as they do, that sometimes maybe it's like a bottlenecking of an eventuality where we always end up in this place where we end up killing a lot of fucking people on one side of a line versus the other side of the line. And in that firefight, a lot of innocent people get killed. And you're not the first person to think, wouldn't it be great if women and children didn't have to die? It's like, yeah, that would be fucking great, pal. But that's not the way the world works, is it? Mm-hmm. Because if you just go back, again, I just think that he is coming from this place of like a harsh reality that we just may not be willing to accept in this world where you can have a drone drop off French fries from McDonald's in like 20 minutes, not even. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a different, we our society is so cushy now compared to, like,
you have to You have to basically accept the extremely uncomfortable, harsh realities that war presents, and kind of be okay with it,
right? And
not be okay with it.
Yeah, I know what you
accept them.
Yes, you have to accept that
those are prerequisites,
right?
Unfortunately, they don't have to be. No one wants them to be.
Because like the arguments of like, well, the women and children in Palestine, it's a genocide. Oh my God, but what about October 7th? Oh my God. Like, guys, the reality is it's so fucking complicated. Every side says the other side's lying. The other side says that this one's committing a genocide. This one says that they're committing terrorism. Do you see the problem here? No one can get to the bottom of anything when things are like this. So what do you expect to happen? It's like you really expect everyone to just...
You have to make immediate decisions on limited information all the time.
Yeah.
For years.
And I think that people just talking about how America, propped up everybody that ever did anything wrong and like all these things, like, it's just like, what are you doing? Like, what do you do? Like, why?
It's like, I mean, that's why I think it's important not just to read like history and stuff. I think it's important to read history from not just both perspectives of like one side of a war, but even within a war, like reading the books that generals in, the Iraqi and Afghani war, like U.S. generals who served in the military and like made the top decisions, reading their opinions on the war and the decisions that were made, and then reading, George W. Bush's book and his opinion. And you kind of see this like, the generals are just like, oh, the fucking, the brass in DC are fucking idiots. I tell them I'm the expert. I'm the one fighting the war, putting my life on the line. And they make a decision based on how it looks on TV. And you're like, yeah, fuck the DC politicians. Right. Like, they're idiots. And then you read George W. Bush's thing and you hear the information that he is dealing with and sort of trying to like juggle with, and so you're like, oh yeah, that changes things a little bit.
It's a very juvenile-esque kind of like opinion to have. Like Dave Smith and all these people, they're just kind of leaning back and waiting for everything to be over with. They read the book on it and go, well, America should have done this here because they ended up fucking killing like 40 innocent civilians over here. It's like, we're the bad guys. And it's like, dude, that was not exactly how that went down. Like a lot of things kind of like led to that being, and I'm not like saying America never did anything wrong, but all I'm saying is like, he's like a hindsight analyst is what I've been calling him in my head. It's all I can think of to call him, It's like you it's so convenient for you. Oh, thanks. Is it still red at the top? It's like it's so convenient for you to be able to read the book 10 years after the thing actually happened and go, well, wouldn't it be better if this didn't go down this way? It's like, of course it would have, man.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think Dave Smith is really valuable because he's shed light on things about the U.S. government, CIA, and our decisions that we made that I never knew or thought about.
And he made clear, just his point in an interview, he was like, look, I'm not trying to like say that America's the problem here. I'm not trying to like, he's like, I am on the side of the country that I'm from. Like whatever he called himself, an American chauvinist. I forget what it was. I forget. He might have not said that, but he said something along the lines of like, that's not what my intention isn't to do that, but I'm just telling you the truth. Like these things did happen. And that's why it's totally okay and respectable. Like he's not lying. These things are true, but I think at the end of the day, it's not like anything. Look, maybe slowly but surely we'll get to a place where it doesn't go down this way every time, and that's the hope with this free speech platform.
All right, man. Well, good to have you back. Good to be back on the podcast.
Glad to be back.
Episode 37 after what, 6 months off? Shit.
Little hiatus. The Chili Peppers did it. They're fine.
That's true. Well, hopefully all you people who subscribed didn't unsubscribe.
No, they didn't. Number's the same.
Great. Well, glad to be back.
Right.
Go for a run right after this.
All right.
All right.
Next week or whatever.
Thanks, people.